down off of your feet. Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang.
All right, TitanX, what's up? We got to start off on the right foot here. We need some good energy today in the house. That's what we're going to do today. All right, we all know why we're here. We're going to bring up Team Pulsar. Oh, I got a little green screen action going on my face there. I look like a cyborg there. Look at that. All right, that's a little fucked up. Let's see if I can move away. All right, I don't care. Cyborg it is. All right, we're going to bring up Team Pulsar. We're going to talk about what's happened, and we're going to talk about some community issues. And we're going to see if we can get through the beginning of working through this all. So I got some good gentlemen that I want to bring up stage. Mr. Kool-Aid, how are you?
What's going on? How are we doing?
I appreciate you being here.
Of course.
Mr. Maximus J, how are you, sir?
Oh, you're muted, sir.
You're muted.
Oh, there we go. Excellent. How are you?
Live is hard. I tell you, I do that once every stream. How you doing, man? I'm glad you're here.
Excellent, man. Excellent. Just waking up, but we're here.
All right. And we got GIF already just showed up. So that's awesome to see. GIF is here. He is dealing with family. So he's going to cut in and out as he can. But GIF, welcome, sir. I appreciate you being here.
What's going on, guys?
All right. So how you guys doing?
Doing good. Doing good. I got a little sick from the vids from my game dev retreat. So trying to recoup on that, but doing okay. Everything is good in the Build on TitanX community, and DeFi for All is launching big old candles, and we cannot argue with that.
No, dude, TitanX is doing phenomenal. It is absolutely insane what's going on with Build on TitanX.
Absolutely.
Like, where did this come from? This came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Well, we knew it would come from at the end of the year. We knew it would come from at the end of the year, and like that's the one thing is. A lot of people may not know that I reached out to Jake almost a year before TitanX even launched to offer him help on systemic design because I really enjoyed his alter ego character and how he put his mythos about himself. I think it's really important to have those vectors on how you push yourself and how you focus and grind positivity into the ethos and the ecosphere. So, yeah, there's been a lot of stuff and things are good. Just moving in the right direction.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Gift, do you have a chance to talk for 1 second? If you don't, that's cool. Okay. We'll go back to him. So what I want to talk about first off is let's go back to the beginning real quick and let's talk about where this started in the very beginning. Where did Pulsar come from? What's this idea?
Sure. Well, I mean, gosh, I was in TitanX on the first day. In fact, I was the one that coined TitanX as proof of Ethereum instead of using the term leverage play of Ethereum because Hex is proof of time, right? And then Zen is proof of fair launch. And then the next evolution of all that is going to be proof of Ethereum. And that's exactly what TitanX is. And so in the beginning, we started to build and we'd even go through some of the dev diaries on where we came from and some problems that we had with our original dev team and how GIF ended up starting being not just the founder, but lead dev instead of being a tourist. But at the end of the day, what we wanted to do is build something that hadn't been done before, and we wanted to scope on what our pillars were. And to do that, we actually proved out all of our different protocols as pillars and mechanics and systemic design on Pulsechain. So we wanted to do that live. And so through that, we built multiple different GIF tech protocols to build a system that can take any coin and make it deflationary, not just built on what the TitanX deflationary mechanics of buy and burn are, but something that can actually turn everything like a piston to make it a deflationary mechanic on that coin itself and use the creation, not inflation ethos to build a whole new paradigm on how people do things rather than just mint and stake. And so we did that, and we did that with GIF to PGIF. We did that with iBurn, which was the first time that anything had parity in between Pulsechain and Ethereum with EICOSA and PICOSA. And then we did that with two other community coins, which is Stable and Noble, which actually had the dynamic protocol fee, which is really the most important mechanic to the entire GiftTech ecosystem. And then now that we had all of those components together and wrapped in a bow, we tackled the bridge, which was the hardest part of the entire thing that no one had been done before, which we can go through, during this call, that even the Pulsechain bridge validators weren't looking for the transmission of the codelets to actually come across the bridge. And so that's why we had to deploy V0 to V1, even though we had a perfect, audit. We had deployed 12 different times on testnet in between both testnets, and it worked. And so when we went to mainnet, we'd assumed that everything was going to work perfectly. So it's been a huge, process to going through the entire system, but each different bullet point of what Pulsar is had been sussed out on Pulsechain and multiple different tokens to get there.
Okay, so let me kind of slow down and recap just a little bit in a slightly different way, because, sir, you are awesome, and all that makes sense to me. But
for those that have not lived through
12
it,
months ago, most of that would have been like, bro, you lost me 3 sentences in.
Of course.
And that's like over a year of time, by the way. So that's like a year of time in like 3 sentences.
And to be fair, Giff is the only person that can speak and translate Larry natively and intrinsically. So definitely we can go through the processes.
Let me see if I can do its slight justice here. Okay, so Pulsar was an idea in the very beginning, and you knew what you wanted to do with that. But before you launched Pulsar, you wanted to test out and prove each of these ideas individually, so that you knew that this thing was going to be bulletproof and it was going to be awesome.
That's right.
That's the whole point of what you're doing.
Yeah, and we wanted to kind of lean back onto how we do things as game developers, right? You want to test in real time. You want to do simulation, not speculation. You want to know that each component is a known good and a radical in the right direction, rather than suss and speculate on if it may work the way that you think it is. And it's just something that, Giff and I kind of had this focus point, both from my experience in game design and all the rest of that, and his experience, that we thought this is the way, right, to actually test each component. Simulation, not speculation. Don't lock yourself into a leaky boat. And then all the other pillars that we came up with, the GiftTech process, just to make sure that when we brought it here to build on TitanX, it was actually not just feasible, but definable throughout the entire process.
So one by one, you made protocols on Pulsechain. And each of these protocols was one of these pillars of Pulsar.
That's right.
And what you did was you created it, and then you, for lack of a better term, played with it and refined it and got it to where, okay, now it's foolproof. That's probably a bad term. It's the economic energy can't be drained out of it. There's no, that's what you say when you talk about leaky boat.
Right.
You're not going to be able to come in and just extract this straight out.
Right. So, and how the economic energy gets combined together into a vector is
right.
It's kind of like alchemy, right? Taking transmuted stuff and turning it into something else, which really isn't the way that most things do. I mean, if you look at, Hex and its locked inflation, it's the T-share that's the important part, not the token, right? When you look at Zen and how fair launch run is, how do you run that back to get that inflation from going rampant? And all of those are system designs that should be tested out. And that's why with GIF and PGIF, and even all of the tokens that we did before, it's glowingly put, this is an experimental token to test our technology to make sure that we do it in real time. And that's one of the real benefits about doing things on Pulsechain. It's so cheap that you can actually do it live in mainnet, right? You don't actually have to, take each contract at, $2,000 per contract and all the GUI necessary and all the rest of that you can actually take the leeway to do things on mainnet, which is definitely a different way of doing things. But it's a much more real way of doing things because everything is live, and that is a different way to actually do everything. So, different way that we do things with our team is we do it in real time.
We do it live.
Sounds good. So, so kind of the main things you were sussing out on the Pulsechain side was sort of the arbitrage feature, the ability to bring one asset that's on two chains to parity.
Mhm.
And then a dynamic ceiling was the next sort of iteration. Is that correct?
Dynamic protocol fee. It's really,
I'm sorry,
this is where it gets a
protocol.
little different because GIF had a static ceiling between GIF and PGIF. And when you look at what GIF did to PGIF, it did 30,000x. But because the protocol fee was static to its own ceiling, it ran too far up that it had nowhere to go, right? It didn't have.
Let me stop you for 1 second because you just glossed over that. When you guys were experimenting this, you made something that did a 30,000x.
That's right.
Is that what you just said?
That's right.
Come on.
To the point to where like GIF and us were like, hey guys, you should probably relax. Like this is not sustainable.
And we were even telling people this. Yeah, we were even telling people this to be like, yo, guys, this is nuts. This is our experimental token. And we were trying to explain that all, in Telegram and all the rest of that stuff. But the fervor was there. People got the green candle FOMO. And it was great to see that work. But then when we actually looked at, it blew up too big and it didn't have anywhere to go because we hadn't built any of the elbow room necessary to have that protocol fee keep continuing to have its own buy and burn. And that's what's really interesting is that with the TitanX, you have all the other communities adding into the buy and burn together that all the whack and circle each other's protocol. With this, it did that, but we didn't have all those other wagons. It had to compete with itself on its own protocol base. And so that was our first lesson into trying to figure out how do we get to the dynamic protocol ceiling, dynamic protocol fee, which funnels as its own reactive buy and burn. Because with creation, not inflation, you can't front run the token. Well, on the PGIF side, you are creating the token out of magic, right? Out of the actual code is law. And then from there, the creation process handles its own buy and burn, that it can actually handle its own burn as it runs reflexively, working as a piston.
Good Lord. I just hit the wrong button. Thought I was grabbing the microphone or grabbed the freaking camera. All right,
That's all right, sir. That is all right.
Hey,
like I said, only one of my
can,
eyeballs is open so far. So once we get into this grind, I'll even get better.
You're doing a lot better than I am. When I have no sleep, I don't know if you caught it, but I did a stream with Blaze at like 3 a.m. for the 88-day payout. Not pretty. I'm gonna tell you right now, unless you want to laugh, don't watch it.
Oh my. Well, what is the new meme for you with the badongs or whatever it is?
I'm not giving that to you. We're trying to make this a nice stream. We're not bringing Dong X into this shit. GIF, buddy, I know you have a limited amount of time, so anytime you want to pop in, just interrupt, because Lord knows I do it enough for everyone. So I need a little bit of payback, and just interrupt me whenever you're ready to speak about anything. But more specifically, I do want you to talk, if you do get a second, I do want you to talk about the V0 deployment and the V1 deployment of Pulsar. Is that what you're calling it?
Sure. And if he's not around right now, I can do it.
Okay, but that's kind of what I want to get to.
Sure.
Eventually.
Well, yeah, I know. With him, he's with family time right now, so his reception is not good. So
no. Well, yeah. I get that, and family time is very important.
Right.
But I appreciate him having some time to come on in when he gets a chance.
Yep.
Okay. So we went over the Pulsechain origins. We went over the sort of gift tech experiments on Pulsechain, which is the pillars of what Pulsar is.
Sure.
One of those pillars did a 30,000x. And now I guess it'd be a good time.
Let's go through a couple different ones. So one of the pillars one of the experiments did 30,000x. The next experiment with iBurn was the first time that parity was established between Pulsechain and Ethereum with Icosa.
Explain it to people who don't know Pulsechain, who don't know Icosa.
Sure. Let's go through that a little bit. So again, Hex, which is a huge inspiration or core components of what TitanX was used, or what Jake learned on, is a derivative off of a T-share. So that's icosahedron, And because obviously Pulsechain is a fork of Ethereum, you have both copies on either side, right? And so there is infighting in between which hex is the real hex. We won't worry about all the rest of that, but the hexes are at different prices. And so that means the ICOSAs are at different prices. And what we did with iBurn is we created a protocol that allowed you to bridge in an asset and then combine both of those economic energies together to create a new protocol from either side of either chain. So you can use the Ethereum ICOSA, or you can use the Pulsechain ICOSA to create iBurn. And so that would give a dynamic arbitrage between both different ways. And what we saw is parity, which means price matching on either side. We were the first ones to create a parity from Ethereum to Pulsechain. So that was really, really cool. That also dynamically spun up the flywheels on the eHex ecosystem. But it realistically, our tools are infrastructure tools that allow a community to create their coin to be deflationary. And we've built it on what would be called a meme coin or something with a vanilla deployer. We built it on an existing asset. We built it on our own assets. And then after iBurn, we did Stable and Noble. Now, unfortunately, with Stable, they were using a fork of an algo stablecoin. And unfortunately, without an Oracle on Pulsechain, they had inflation bugs. But even with those fighting the inflation bugs of their own token itself, the Stable token and the GiftTech protocol burned what Pulsechain had done in an entire year within 2 months. So that's pretty astronomical. I think it burned, what was it, 4 trillion tokens or something? Again. So the protocol,
just the last part. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, we outburned what Pulsechain had done from the inception of Pulsechain. And I believe it's like 4 trillion is what their community used GiftTech to burn within their own ecosystem. Because again, we're building tools to allow your community or your token to not only be deflationary, but add hooks into a new token that can actually do more features and facets down the road. Yes,
Maximus,
sir. And definitely Hex Surfer.
I want you to talk to. Sorry.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to wake up.
Yeah, Jay's on the other end of the world.
I'm always trying to wake up.
Yeah. No, and Kool-Aid's doing a beautiful job of explaining. Like, I really do think it's important to kind of lay out what got us here, and really just the history of it all, because it did happen really, really quick too. And if you weren't paying attention, you didn't really see what was going on. And so, yeah, Stable was next, and then Noble was another one of those experiments where we released Nope, and that was the dynamic ceiling. So we kind of moved away
dynamic
from
protocol fee.
Or dynamic protocol.
I did that to you guys. I said that.
Feelings and ratios, by the way, guys. So if you hear us interchangeably using them, just correct us or understand that we're maybe swapping things around when we shouldn't be. But
when smart people talk to a dumb guy, they start saying dumb shit. That's what happens.
Ceilings and ratios. Dynamic protocol fee, and that's really where we solidified that, because the Stable wasn't a good enough experiment to do the dynamic piece on its own. We wanted to also test that out on an existing product, and so that's where that whole idea came from. And we liked the result. And so at that point, it was like, okay, we've got all the pieces. Because remember, Pulsar was the original idea, and Pulsar from the inception, 8 months or 9 months ago, it's completely different now than what it was then. And we knew that if we're going to do this right, and if we're going to go on this journey, we have to go and explore and test out all these different pieces and break things, see what works, and then bring that all together into something, a complete something to then launch. And so, yeah, like, it massively changed. And we were making little fine tunes and tweaks all the way up until just about the launch, in terms of like what we sent to, figuring out who we were going to send to what vaults and stuff like that. We were fine tuning that up until the end, and dialing in percentages. But yeah, like, all those pieces were so important. And if you weren't in a Telegram, if you weren't following along because maybe you're not into Pulsechain or whatever the reason is, then you missed a lot of that, right?
Right. And another thing is, like, we've never been a Spaces type person. We were strictly more of a Telegram type community, right? So we really didn't take part in most of the spaces and conversations because we were working on our siloed experiments as we go. And as most of the founders have now BuildOnTitanX have realized, the bots that track you when you are creating tokens is crazy. The whole sniper bot problem is a problem. I know I was listening to the Lotus stream the other day where Rainman was talking about, when they did all the other stuff they were doing before, the bots are out of control. Well, with the success of PGIF, we had people sniffing around our buy and burn because all of the protocols work together to burn PGIF and GIF. So when we were doing more work to get stuff implemented, the sniper bots would track that and automatically buy up the new token even before we had deployed, announced, or anything else. So we even got to the point that we weren't even telling the community founders what the new token was going to be or the art or all the rest of that till we deployed, because they would then give it out to other people. So we would have front running and all the rest of that type of stuff. We really believe in the idea of a fair launch with creation, not inflation, because we're already building on somebody's existing token. There is nothing to front run, right? So we want to make sure that when
let me pause you on that, because that is a really good important part, and I want to get back.
Yeah, that's a whole nother point to dive into.
I want to get back to creation, not inflation, and why that's important. That something like I don't want to ruffle people's feathers, but why something that is perceived as a stealth launch isn't necessarily that big of a deal with what you guys are doing. I do want to get back to that, but I want to get back to the communication just for a second. So you guys are a Pulsechain centric team. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where you guys have, you guys are, your origins are kind of not necessarily your origins, but if we trace back a couple of years, you guys, kind of came from the Hex crowd on the Pulsechain side.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would never consider myself a maximalist. I say I'm a mechanics maximalist, right? I'm token agnostic when it comes to things. If they have good systems, I'm very interested.
Right. But to my point that I'm trying to get to, Pulsechain kind of lives in Telegram chats.
Right.
That's where all the comms are done. Everything I've ever done in Pulsechain, I did not learn about it on X beforehand. Now I can follow on it afterwards on X, but I didn't learn about it beforehand on X. I learned about it in Telegram.
Right.
And so you guys did go into spaces, I don't know how long ago that was at this point, 9 months ago, to announce your initial idea on Pulsechain. Mm-hmm. And then while you guys were doing these pillars, you stayed pretty much entirely in the Telegrams.
That's right. And also you have to remember 11 o'clock on the weekend is maybe the only time I sleep the week. So that is,
no, you're good. You're good.
Don't so like that,
I'm just trying to present what people didn't see.
Correct.
And to kind of correct some perceptions, because I got a lot of DMs that said this team came out of nowhere. Well, they've had a Telegram for 9 months now.
Right.
In which, can I ask you guys, have you been active in the Telegram for 9 months? Because I'm pretty sure you have.
Yeah, we've been active in the Telegram. Now, one thing is when GIF was getting close to put things.
Not talking about that just yet. Let me stop you right there. I'm not talking about that just yet. We'll get there. I promise you we're going to get there.
Well, we definitely have been in Telegram in between the GIFs concentric chats, and then Pulsar, because it's BuildOnTitanX, was a separate Telegram, but it had overlaying people and overlaying communities, right? So at the end of the day, we definitely talked in both.
Okay, so let me rephrase that. Have you been radio silent for 9 months?
No.
Okay. So there is a notion that some people have that this team has been completely silent and hasn't communicated anything because they haven't been on spaces and they haven't done stuff on X for the most part.
True.
Now, like I said, this is a Pulsechain centric team. That's the norm for Pulsechain. So let's just get that out of the way. Okay. Oops.
Well, on top of that, the
you
funny
guys
thing
didn't
is
necessarily do that the way that people expected.
Sure. Almost all of the Blaze team I'm in a private Telegram channel with, and like most of the other founders, we've got this private Telegram group that we've been bullshitting with since pretty much day one. So, I've been talking with all the other founders forever, and it wasn't like public on X that we were talking to all the rest of them. So like Bat Sports, an old friend, Rainman, old friend, Scotty, old friend, Ouroboros founder, the dude, like everyone, like talking to them forever in private rooms. But Publicly, no, especially not on X.
Publicly on X.
Yeah.
I just wanted to dispel this notion that you guys have been radio silent. And the second part I want to dispel is this idea that you guys stealth launched, because someone noticed that I hadn't been in the Pulsechain, the Pulsar Telegram for quite a while.
Sure.
And so they forwarded me a message and they said, hey, I don't know if you caught it, but they have sort of pre-announced that their launch is happening imminently.
Well, you know what's funny?
You guys did announce it.
Well, GIF's announcement happened when I was at Burning Man. So I was in the middle of the damn desert when all that happened. And I was like, oh shit, this may actually happen while I'm at Burning Man. So, and I was prepped to go live and talk about stuff from the burn. You know, I was with RG3 and we had our Starlink. So we were prepped. But I even saw the APB that GIF had given the warning from the burn. So, you know, at that point, I'm like, okay, we're waiting for, our fearless leader to let us know what's going on. But yeah, I was even in the desert when I got the APB.
Yeah. Okay. And so again, we kind of, we touched on this a bit, but we kind of got pretty defensive with stuff with launches because everything was getting so front run that's why we got into this habit of just like, poop, here it is.
That's front run. Hold on. Let's slow that down. That's front run on the native token that we're building on. You can't front run our tech because we create, not inflate. So you actually need the initial token to create the deflationary gift tech asset that runs as a piston on your system. So when people saw that we were plugging things into the buy and burn, they would go buy the initial asset and then run that price up before we even launched, just when we were sussing out stuff on either on testnet or on mainnet. So it was very frustrating for us to get all the hooks that needed to be turned on when you had people that were actually just sitting and watching your master buy and burn to see what was coming into it and what protocol tech was being plugged in before we even announced anything. So yeah, we had to try to keep everything close to the chest before to protect, the entire deployment.
Okay. Yeah, this question is a good segue. I'm sorry.
Sure. We can pivot into that.
Yeah. You can finish that point if you want to.
I was just going to say, it's like they totally were, front running both the underlying asset and even the new contracts. Because as soon as the contract would go live, bots would start sniffing it out, and you start to execute trades on the different pairs, and that would run the price up of the thing that we just launched, like the brand new contract.
Well, what's even funny is we taught people how to use the block explorer to run the contracts with GIF and PGIF. So we kind of taught them to actually run things from the
I may have made a video that helped people learn how to do that.
You did. Yeah. You actually were the first one to teach people how to do that. But
that's a good idea at the time.
It's it's an interesting way to launch stuff like that. I'm going to take a quick smoke. Jay, why don't you show people the audit real quick and run that through with Mo?
Sure thing.
So when he comes back, we can kind of talk about it. But I guess as you're bringing the audit up, you guys work with a security professional first.
Yeah. So we just brought on a security professional onto the team, and this is getting into tricky territory because some of this we don't want to necessarily get into details about. But you got to understand is that through GIF's exploration of smart contracts and his whole journey of I guess going from somebody who was supposed to just kind of start auditing and be the sort of manager middleman to becoming the main guy, made some really, really good relationships along the way. And some of those relationships were with core ETH developers, like some of the original guys who developed the very first smart contracts on ETH. So these are guys who have, I don't know, probably thousands of deployments under their belt. So that is like where he, sharpened his teeth. And so these are people that nobody even knows they exist, to be honest with you. We don't even know their real name. And so that is who he kind of had in his corner. And then through that development, he got to see like how to best execute, basic stuff like libraries and how to fight against, this attack or that attack. And so that is where a lot of the foundational, I I guess the foundational education comes from. And we were integrating that all the way back in GIF and PGIF. So like that's been part of our ethos since the beginning. It's like we got extremely lucky, but you got to understand is that came after a lot of pain and suffering, a lot of lost money, a lot of people ghosting you, a lot of people saying that they could do it, but they can't. And so that's literally what propelled GIF into becoming the guy, is that we were just so sick of getting like wrung out by guys who were supposed to be developers, who were supposed to be the guy. And we just said, okay, forget it. We're going to go into the deep end and handle this ourselves. And that's essentially what happened there. So when it came time for this, is we just decided to bring somebody on to work hand in hand with GIF and audit as we were building and finishing, right? So that's kind of how all that happened.
So can I ask? It did. I know you guys went. I know GIF went into it in the spaces yesterday, but he couldn't go into it too far before he was just shredded for his efforts.
Okay, I actually haven't listened to that, so I'm not aware of what.
Okay, I love everybody in this community, but I'll tell you what. From my perception, and I did come in late, so maybe I missed the beginning and where it started. But from my perception, it seemed like a group of people come in and they go, "Hey, we made a mistake. We shot ourselves in the foot, proverbially, and here's our hat in hand." And it seemed like some people were more interested in taking y'all back and beating beat the shit out of y'all for the efforts than actually listening to what you guys had to say. So that's really the main reason why I want you guys to be here today, is to be able to get out, what happened and what you guys did. There are, obviously the community does have issues with the way that went down, and we're trying to work through those and why they went down the way they did. We're not making excuses, but we're explaining it. And hopefully when you explain these things, you kind of understand. So we went down the communication, why it went down the way it did.
Got it.
Can we talk about the audits? Can we talk about the audits a little bit? I don't plan on hammering you on this.
No, sure, go ahead.
Why were audits initially not planned? From my understanding, I heard that y'all had a security professional that was so legit that audits are literally redundant at that point. But was it not? I mean, at least maybe you guys maybe had the idea that we would still want the audits.
Yeah, and maybe this was an oversight, but with everything, like all the pieces that we had previously built and tested, and then having the security professional working with us and having the developers in our corner, another developer that we have is super experienced on the Pulsechain side. Even what's funny about that is we even had the OmniBridge issue, which caused us to go from V0 to the new version. But yeah, that was essentially it. We got an audit early on, and then after that, it was the security professional, and then that was it.
Let me springboard into there. So we got an actually audit done, and we had passed by someone that is known in the TitanX community. But there was some things that we had sussed out that wasn't going to be able to be possible. And that's why we went on our exploration of components. Now, what an audit does is an audit says that the code will execute as commanded. It doesn't actually necessarily mean that it will be successful in deployment on what happens. And that's where we got our simulation, not speculation. In the game development side, you can basically say, does a game get through certification? That doesn't mean it's a good game, right? So cert is what we go through in game dev to actually say, will this run on a console? Will this not blue screen? Will this not do that? That doesn't mean the game is fun. And when we got our audit, when we were dealing with our dev team that we had outsourced before we parted ways with them, we were good and we were greenlit to launch. But we had realized that some of those components inherently from our systemic design experience wasn't going to work out. And that's where we actually did the GIF Tech use case to go through everything. Let me go ahead and pull up the actual audit itself. And so when you're looking at what an audit does, like I was just trying to explain, it says that
you want me to just pull it up? I got it on the screen.
Yeah, go ahead and pull it up and scroll down. So go ahead and pull up the actual audit
It's gonna
itself.
be downloaded actually. Hold on. Oh no. Okay, good. I went right to it.
So this is an actual testnet audit between both different testnets. So when people are doing audits, they're usually doing an audit in between one testnet. We went from Sepolia to testnet v4 and actually had everything done with 12 different test deployments perfectly, flawlessly. And this audit itself, though we wanted to get everything done component by component to actually suss that out, is actually a perfect audit. Go ahead and scroll down through this, Jay.
Can I ask you, when was this audit done?
Just done.
Okay. So I'm not trying to hammer the point, but why, like, is it maybe let me ask it this way. Is it the fact that Pulsechain doesn't necessarily go that method of audits, and the fact that you had the security professionals that you did, that you felt confident enough that you didn't think that the audits were necessarily that big of a deal?
Right. Well, the difference was is that all of our components that would have been audited were already sussed out from the deployment of the other tokens. Right. Each of the other tokens that we already have been doing have had flawless code running for 8 months. So at the end of the day, these speculations on would this work had already been sussed out. So we wanted to get everything launched, and we had already sussed out everything on both test nets. We want to get everything on mainline, and that's kind of how we work as a team, as we work in real time to then get the actual audit done and wrapped in a bow, because that we know that's what's expected, right, for deployment. So we wanted to get all of those things in the simulated side rather than the speculative side.
Okay.
And by the way, for anyone, let me drop the link in the chat. You can go to pulsar.getbook.io and then click the audit line itself. So I'll drop that in the chat, pulsar.getbook.io, for those that are in the Twitter spaces that can't see the screen.
Also, to be fair, like if it sounds a little bit like we're tiptoeing, it's because we are. And we're not tiptoeing because we got something to hide. We're also trying to be mindful of not stepping on toes and not saying things that we shouldn't. And so you're gonna have to, you choose to believe that or not with this. But yeah, in short, the pieces that made up the thing were already proven and running. And so that's kind of what led us and had us so confident in not doing this sooner, like before launch or right around launch, right?
Well, also there's the
now
fact
that it's live, we kind of did do it around launch, but it was not done in advance outside of the original one that we did, which is like way back in the beginning, like 8 months ago.
Well, there's also the fact that the bridge is the first time that this has ever been done. We can get to that with the V0 to V1 deployment. The Pulsechain validators on the bridge had never seen anyone come in through their back end system to actually punch through a smart contract before. So we actually had to reach out to the bridge validators themselves to be like, yo, why are you validating your stuff on testnet? And we're good with 12 different deployment tests, but yet it's not working on the front end. It was like, oh, well, no one had come through this before, so we weren't even listening for it. And so that's why we had to do that V1 deployment, is because we just had to let them know that, hey, we're communicating over this band or this radio frequency that no one had used yet. And they're like, oh, okay, you're perfect. Congratulations to be the first person to do this. But yeah, go ahead and keep scrolling down, Jay.
Yeah, so essentially only 4 of the validators had validated. So everything that was sent over in V0 was just burned, by the way, because they basically just assigned us a 0x address. So that's why we had to essentially redeploy into out of V0 into V1, let's call it.
Right.
That's what happened there. So.
Yeah, and with everyone watching what we've done before, we were trying to be very careful who was looking at what we were doing to front run the system, right? Because we wanted to not have scams. We wanted to make sure that everything was tip to toe. This is, multi-chain stuff, which, really is, fresh in what people have been doing with DeFi for all. So we wanted to make sure that people were protected rather than giving it up to people that were sniffing for ways to execute before we were ready and everything was nip and tucked.
Okay. there's a little bit of a fine line that I have to dance because, I started in TitanX, and I started doing this in the very beginning. I've worked with you guys, though. I work with you guys on the gift tech side and or I should say on the Pulsechain side with the gift tech pillars. For the point that I was so excited about Pulsar, I wanted to see what you guys were doing, and I wanted to take part in those experiments you guys were running. And I will say that those experiments made me some money. So I am very happy with what you guys did. And not because I made money, but because I watched you guys take an idea and refine it and make it better and then see something and go, all right, well, we've hit a proverbial wall there. How can we make it better? How can we jump over the wall? How can we knock down the wall? And so I watched you guys do that over and over. And I'm very comfortable with you guys as a team. I'm very comfortable with everything you've done. And as soon as I saw that pre-announcement, I was like, let's fucking go. But as a TitanX person from the very beginning, that other part of me wished you guys knocked out those audits first and wished that the communication was there on that X side and the Spaces side. I'm not here to beat down a dead horse, and we've talked about that, but I do have to acknowledge that as a TitanX person, that sucked. I wish that went better, and I hope that people understand everything that you're saying and that everything you've done that led up to now, and that none of this is nefarious. This is, you're basically letting everyone know what happened.
Sure.
And
and
it's also not something that
as transparent as we can too.
Yeah. And on top of that, we've been in communicate with Jake. He's watched what happened with the gift tech stuff. He's excited about the protocol as he's talked about with Rags and all the rest of that, but we just need to get.
He talked about it on a couple streams actually.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. It's like we've been talking with him behind the scenes. We should have been more vocal about it, and we're sorry about that came about. But we have been in the process of just keeping things close to the chest because there's not a circulating supply at launch when we're building another token. So it just kind of got lost in the weeds on how that came across. But going back to the audit itself, as you can see, Jay, scrolling down, there's not one single blip on what isn't passed on the security.
Yeah, I apologize. I did interrupt you there. It's a perfect audit is what you're basically getting at, and I totally ruined the flow of that. It's a perfect fucking audit. You guys just did.
No, you look, you bring up a great point. And again, we just that was let's call it an oversight, I guess. We weren't expecting to, and I told you about this before we went live, like we weren't really expecting to be so widely welcomed because our track record, showed that we weren't really welcomed that greatly into communities. And the TitanX community, like it actually is incredible what you guys have done. And I don't know if you guys see that or not, but most communities are not like you guys. And most communities will not just like run up to you, grab you by the arm and say, okay, let's go together. And like, we're charging at war together. And we were not used to that. And so we missed those very clear, probably in hindsight, very clear indicators and attempts by the community to like lock arms. We totally missed it. And it is what it is. So at this point, like that's
very good way to say it.
We're discussing it. Yeah.
Look, it is what it is. That's the point of today, is to get out everything that happened, to get out the facts that happened. So everyone can understand. We're not going to make excuses. Okay, you said what happened. We all understand. If anyone has any questions, please put it in the chat. Please hop into the follow-on stream that we're going to do right after this, where we can debate into oblivion, all these points. Sure. But I do want to move on because I am a firm believer in, once something has happened, you need to figure out why it happened, fix it, and move on. And, spending time, just hammering something in the past doesn't do any good. Once we figure out what happened, once we, figure out how to move forward, cool, let's do that. So I feel like you guys have made your case as to what happened and why it happened. If anyone has any questions, we can go through that. But to your point, you guys have now done an audit. It is a perfect audit.
That's right. Absolutely perfect audit. Not one single flaw. But I mean, that goes because we had sussed out each of these components before. Right. So it's a different way of building a game, if you will. a different engine, if you will, to how people normally do those things. Plus, you know, with a normal audit itself, you're usually only dealing with one chain. This is dealing with two different chains. And, you know, Pulsechain is a very unique experiment in and of itself, being a fork of Ethereum, et cetera, with the RH side. So we wanted to make sure that all the deployments were correct before the audit actually, you know, went through and all the rest, which is, you know, inherently why we did it the way we did. But again, perfect audit, not a single flaw through the entire thing. The only issue basically was the bridge validators were not expecting us to use a very unique and fluid way to access their bridge because it hadn't been done before.
GIF explained it perfectly in a stream that you all did with the dude. I think it was last week at this point. So I encourage all of y'all to go to the Helios page, check out that stream. You'll get even more in-depth backstory as to everything that's happened. GIF did a great job talking about all the difficulties that he had trying to go from testnet to mainnet. GIF, if you are available, go ahead and come on whenever you get a chance. And
can you guys hear me okay?
Yay, there he is.
There he is.
This is about as good a service as I'm going to get. So just stop me or mute me if it starts breaking up.
100%. You're great.
No
You're
worries,
perfect.
sir.
I had to make sure I was here and at least trying to make myself available in case anything came up. But from what I have heard, and I haven't heard everything, I mean, Jay and Kool-Aid are just killing it. They're doing such a great job explaining what's going on. I hope everybody else feels that way. If anybody wants to go super geeky, I'm your guy. So just let me know.
Well, let's go into the
super
geek.
geeky. Yeah,
let's go into the geek.
Tell us about Pulsar and what it's all about. What are you trying to do here? Geek me out, brother. Let's go.
Let me put it as simply as possible, and then we'll move deeper.
Okay.
So as simply as possible, I don't think anybody in this community would deny that the BuildOnTitanX initiative on Ethereum has been wildly successful. That is awesome. Sometimes in the past, we've seen community initiatives kind of outgrow its space. And what we want to do is ensure another new fertile land, kind of like an expansion of what could be done. So we've got this wildly successful program or initiative on Ethereum BuildOnTitanX, which look at some of these protocols. I mean, man, look at Volt, look at DragonX. TitanX is doing amazing. There's many, many, many more protocols I could list. But the point is it's working. So why not expand it cross-chain? Not multi-chain, not omni-chain. The term is cross-chain. And it's not better. It's not worse. It's just something different. It's adding a new layer of expansion. So what happens when we build a successful or we start a new initiative on Pulsechain to build on TitanX, or if you will, build on Pulsar? It could be seen either way and it could be taken either way. Well, what happens is you have room to grow.
Oh, he's breaking up now.
And we lost him.
He'll come back in because the way GIF paraphrases things and the way his mind works is nothing like I've ever seen. In fact, he's the only person that can translate Larry fluidly, and we always joke that he's surgical and I'm spatial. And what he was saying is right, because what Pulsar does, once we go into the mechanics, is Pulsar burns 100% of the TitanX that gets used into it. Half of it is soft burned because it's sent as a well or an oasis or a nesting ground for all the BuildOnTitanX people to come over admin key free and actually use the system and use all the tokens to not worry about it. But when it gets bridged over into Pulsechain, it is no longer, that TitanX is no longer available for the Ethereum auto routing system, which is what we're finalizing with both GIF and Jake for the V2 buy and burn that gets it exactly how Jake wants it to be. But because it's over there, it's now removed or redacted from the Ethereum routing pools. That means that it is 100% burned across the way. And there's other things that we can get into when we get to the system design and the mechanics on what it does. But that's very unique. And it's also locked into a PulseX V2 full range liquidity pool that the contract owns, not a person. So there's no way it can rug. There's no way it can go anywhere. It is a permanent vestige to make sure that the BuildOnTitanX community can access Pulsechain to expand that fertile ground, or that DLC, if you will, that allows you to go and create with a whole nother chain and a whole nother sense of community. Because ideally, at the end of the day, the most important facet that Jake built into TitanX is the BuildOnTitanX mythos, the we, not the me. That is the one thing that I would say that RH didn't do well. He did not want people to actually build together as a component and as a whole to bring the betterment of everything together. So yeah, definitely, Jake. Hey, good to see you here, bud. So yes, right now with the V2 buy and burn, good to see you here, man. And what I was saying before is Jake and I had talked even a year before TitanX had launched, because I had loved his alter ego mythos on, I think the term was, I'm going to put myself into my alter ego and I'm going to go fuck my own girlfriend. And if I don't push myself to the nth degree, I need to go take care of this. And I believe it's Emil and K. It's bad pronouncing. I'm sorry about that, Jake. But I mean, a year even before TitanX, I had reached out to him in his DMs, and he can check to give my assistance. So we've always been fluid with Jake on how it works. So right now, the last nip and tuck is we're getting the V2 buy and burn to automatically take the 87.5% of the ETH that comes from the dynamic protocol fee to buy TitanX first, to then buy Pulsar, and then to fully deconstruct or completely remove it from existence. This is different than what the normal buy and burn people do. Normally they just send it to a debt address, which isn't hard. But when you remove the token from ever existing, you're going to have some very interesting market cap things, because instead of the token sitting somewhere else, locked where it can't be touched, it's actually completely destroyed. And that was some of the tech that we've been building on the gift tech side to then bring over to the BuildOnTitanX side. So yeah, so the V2 buy and burn, which GIF and his other partner dev are working through, will be going to take the ETH to then buy TitanX, to then buy Pulsar, and then fully deconstruct Pulsar from ever existing, which is going to, again, make some interesting arbitrage stuff, since the destruction of Pulsar is happening on the Ethereum side, not on the Pulsechain side. So that liquid well of Pulsar and Ethereum that exists on Pulsechain is going to be a perfect harmonious opportunity for those people that want to build on TitanX through Pulsar to have that vestige, because that's a permanent representation of the entire BuildOnTitanX community through Pulsar and the TitanX, or the eTitanX that's sitting over there in that oasis or that well. The secondary thing also is we do not take any TitanX through the protocol. So even the 8% rebate that you would get from burning TitanX automatically goes from that TitanX to buy Pulsar to then destroy the Pulsar itself completely. So
You're
then,
reading my mind.
right. So let's take the ETH side first. So this is where, and again, there's a lot of stuff that's complex in this, but realistically, not everyone needs to know how a car works. They just want to turn a key and have it there. So from the user's point of view, you just take your TitanX and your dynamic protocol fee, which is going to be the spot price of what TitanX is in ETH, right? They marry together. And then from there, you just immediately mint your Pulsar. You have it. Now we can go into what happens on the Pulsechain side here in a minute. But out of all of that TitanX on the Ethereum side, it's split, right? So the Pulsechain, or the Pulsar mint, immediately splits the TitanX into two. Half of it stays on ETH. And what does it do? Well, 87% of that, or 42%, because it gets weird with math if you want to talk about splitting things. Of that half, 87% of that immediately goes to burn TitanX through the TitanX protocol. Why is that important? Because with Titanx being hyperdeflationary now, you want those points of burning Titanx onto your wallet so you can make miners to get that bonus. I believe, and Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 8%. And if you get 8% after 80 billion, you get that 8% permanently built onto your miner. And what's interesting is how GIF sussed out is even if your miner was created today and you continue to mint Pulsar, when you eventually unmint, let's just say you do a year mint in TitanX, when you unmint, the TitanX protocol is going to check, have you burned TitanX? And it's going to give you that bonus on top of it. So if you start miners now, since it's hyperdeflationary, starting in 2 days, something like that, 2-3 days, you're going to start to get that 8% bonus. And that is huge when you think about what it is from an ROI standpoint, or being able to burn TitanX into the future, because that 8% is compounded in time as you're nesting that miner. So then
I've heard you say that so many times. I've heard this explained so many times. And I just now, my brain clicked where I'm like, wait, I'm going to be starting miners soon. So can you guys? Yeah. Okay. That's awesome.
Exactly. So when
I take
you
part in
start
Pulsar, I'm going to get a bonus on my miners.
That's exactly correct. A permanent bonus to get that 8% to get it where you are future doing it. So you're getting that credit while nesting and helping out the other protocols, while building that vestige on where that TitanX is going to go across the board. Then from there, the remainder of that, which is 4%, or you consider it 8% based on if you're considering everything as a whole, or the split on the TitanX, goes to the DragonX Vault as well as the Helios smart contract. GIF had reached out to all the other builders to get them in. We wanted everyone nested into it when we were starting to do this. Now, this is, of course, before the craziness of all the different protocols that have been built up. But, we'd reached out to the Blaze team. We'd reached out to the Ouroboros stuff, and no one had actually been able to accept this burn credit and put it into them except those two protocols. Otherwise, there would be more there. And that's just how smart contracts are different. GIF is the one who can explain the technicalities on it, but I do understand how that lens works together, right? So we're taking all the TitanX that comes in from Ethereum, and we're giving you the burn credit for 87% of that. And then the rest of it goes to Helios and DragonX. Now, on the Pulsechain side, it's where it gets a little confusing. When you were sending that 50% over to create that soft burn, right? That well or that oasis for BuildOnTitanX permanently guaranteed on Pulsechain on the other side, we mint the same ratio of 4-to-1 that automatically sends it over there. That way it keeps the liquidity pools locked into that dynamic. It's the ceiling that basically is 8 TitanX per 1 Pulsar. And the reason why we wanted to do that, and we can talk about that, or if you look at it in the audit, it guarantees that Pulsar doesn't outrun TitanX. In fact, it uses the system, which we've already sussed out, and people have already seen from Gift Tech in our experiments, as a piston to drag TitanX up as it does this across the board. So instead of just running on one side against the native protocol token, it actually makes sure that it's continuously dragging it back up. So that way, when you use this process, the arbitrage opportunities give the token the ability to make sure that TitanX has even more of a concrete floor to allow it to continue to basically retest its price parameters, right? Because when you look at things running, you're going to see it go across a particular line. You're going to see it retest that line and go up. So it's either resistance or support. And so we're building a protocol that builds concrete support for the underlying protocol across the board. And what's interesting about that is you can take the BuildOnTitanX mythos that if you build on Pulsar, you're automatically hardening that ratio that creates a dynamic support system for the underlying token.
Yeah, not fully understanding that question, but essentially it's just locked in the liquidity pool and it's owned by a contract that nobody can touch. So
right. So there's no way to rug it. There's no way to pull it. There's no way to do anything. It's protocol
So
owned.
as it bridges in, it's automatically locked in the LP.
That's right.
Yeah, after it's bridged over. That's what the Pulsar pathway contract actually is. And you can see proof of this because if you just go to the contract itself, you'll see TitanX, Pulsar, and the PLP token, which is the liquidity providing token. And so the thing that you'll notice is that it'll always have Pulsar and PLP, but it won't always have TitanX because it's trying to grab every bit of TitanX every time it's called, which this will be publicly callable. We're working on that as well. Parts of it will be publicly callable, the part where it executes and pushes over. And so, yeah, essentially, like that's what's happening there. Is it's just trying to grab the most amount of TitanX and bridge it over.
Well, it's actually 1 to 8 on both sides because of how it's split. Like I said, it's a little bit confusing because it's 4 to 1, but yet it's on 2 different chains. So it's 8 to 1 when they marry and cross that it is there.
Okay. I think that perfectly answered that question.
Yeah, so hold on, let me read what Jake's has here. So 8 TitanX per 1 Pulsar. So the same cost basis on ETH. Yes, 8 to 1. However, the protocol fee, or the dynamic protocol fee, is the exact same spot price of TitanX. That way, if TitanX runs, you're actually, when you're minting it, building that nested pool for the buy and burn to be able to handle it at higher ratios and higher levels. And that's what we've seen, from the GIF and PGIF. And it's also the same, if we look at Volt right now, as Volt is running up, it still only has just the TitanX that's coming into buy and burn itself. If TitanX wasn't moving up with Volt, it would have a problem using TitanX to buy and burn itself because it wasn't dynamically swayed in between each other, because we're using the ETH to actually use to do that creation process. And TitanX is proof of Ethereum. As ETH runs, and especially when ETH runs itself, not just as TitanX runs, that dynamic piston is necessary to grind through it to make sure that it always has the ability to deconstruct the TitanX as well as anything else. And Jake, if you definitely want to come on, you're more than welcome to hop in with us too.
Yeah, I think the biggest point, I don't know if we want to transition into this now, is that the ratio itself creates a very different environment that I don't think a lot of people are used to. Because again, there is no mining, there is no staking. We are minting, yeah, but essentially those two are working hand in hand so that it works as a slingshot effect to drag up the underlying asset, the more activity that's occurring on it. And so as we get more volume, as we get more liquidity, as we build more on top of Pulsar, which it's phenomenal. We already have people that we're in talks with to build on top of Pulsar. Is it just creates this piston-like effect. So essentially there's going to be a range that this thing is going to move in terms of price. So it's not just going to go up only, up and to the right only. It's just going to work inside of a range, which opens up a ton of opportunity for LP, which this is kind of a head nod to, us, or a tip of the hat to us and earlier stuff that we did, is because we were teaching people how to do LP on GIF and PGIF. And we wanted people to know how to actually provide liquidity for by themselves, for themselves, because it can be kind of tricky, right? And I don't think a lot of people actually know how to do that. So the big play here, I guess, or the big moneymaker is probably liquidity providing, is because this thing, the more that gets built on it, the more activity that occurs, it's just going to run within a certain range. And the faster that piston runs, the more you make on fees in a 1% pool. I mean, do the math on that. And if we lock up our liquidity on both sides, we're making, cross bridge fees, we're making, LP fees on both sides, right? So that is different than buy and sit and hold. That is different than, buy and farm it. That is different than a lot of the, I guess, the other strategies that exist, right?
Yep.
Crypto, hang on, I already lost his name. I'm going to mispronounce who I'm talking to here. Crypto Compassion, we're going to do a panel stream afterwards, and we can sort of get into all the nitty-gritty questions and debate and throw stuff at each other verbally. We're not going to do that. I'm just kidding.
No, I don't want to do that.
But he was in the backstage, and cool. I had intended to pull up people afterwards, or in the
Compassion's a great guy.
So I definitely want him to come up and talk, as well as anyone else who wants to come up and talk. We'll kind of start wrapping this up here in just a bit, and then we'll just
Yeah,
Trade
like this is
into,
the broad stroke, getting the paint
Yeah.
on the wall for having the conversation, and then we'll have the conversation discussion on the next stream.
Okay. 2 questions. Or actually one more question. I'm gonna toss. It's time for the hard question. All right, you ready? This is the hard one. This is one of the ones that I get the most in my DMs from people that don't understand what you guys are doing. Is this just a value extraction?
Absolutely not. I mean, everything is built within the same protocol base to build on TitanX. Again, with the buy and burn being done and everything like that. In fact, it's building a playground for the BuildOnTitanX ecosystem to run on Pulsechain. Because let's just say TitanX farms right now. Well, let's just say you're extracting $300 for the day from your farm, but it's costing you $36 to mint that, and then $26 to trade that. When you're building on Pulsechain, you're dealing with pennies, both from the deployment of smart contracts, and we also deal with another community that understands the value of DeFi for all, right? Pulsechain also has the ability to run much harder than Ethereum. And there's where you get the real fun thought bubble is what happens if ETH3x and Pulsechain 10x's or 20x's, especially what's going on with the SEC stuff with Richard Hart, instead of paying 12 million to get out of the SEC problem, because the SEC always sticks its fingers in anywhere. He hired 11 of the best attorneys in the world. I mean, it's the meetup for the SEC announcement is in what, a week, 2 weeks, something like that. So much stuff is going on, but again, I'm building my game right now, and we are in launch phase. So I am very burnt out.
I'm surprised you're this coherent. I got a similar answer.
Great.
We don't keep any of the TitanX. Like, we're burning all the TitanX, which I guess would be the argument of any protocol that is built on TitanX. Like, what's the point of any of them? To expand feature set and to burn the core thing. So I think that's essentially the same thing that we've done. So we don't take any of the TitanX.
I literally had a set of banners on, okay,
I love it.
Make sure I touch on this. Gotta make sure I touch, and then you guys hit them before I even bring them up. So yeah, we already did that. And then Jake came in and asked about the buy and burn.
Yeah, and Jake, since we're gonna be popping over to the group panel stream, we'll probably have you hopping over there. This is kind of like for us to clear the floor, get all the facts running in the right direction, get the rails focused, and then we can have everyone from Compassion to Jake and everyone else pop in and have a great conversation. That again is the most fundamental thing about what Jake built, is the built on TitanX ethos, where everyone works together. I had many of arguments in between the E hex and P hex and which is the better hex. And it's like, don't you realize the T share is the most important part of that ecosystem, not the token? And that crossfighting is just silly. Instead of that, you have the build on TitanX build where everyone is in the we, not the me mentality. And that is so good. That is actually the most important mechanic and secret sauce about everything, is building together with positivity, not with grinding and poking, right? And so, I mean, criticism is always welcome, and you should suss out your things. However, being positive and building together uniformly creates a phalanx, and that is exactly where you want to be. So with, again, the value extraction, we take absolutely nothing. This is an infrastructure token, an infrastructure pass that allows all build on TitanX people to come to a secondary chain that have multiple different advantageous use cases to do it. So let's just take one small example. Right now, Volta is number 1, DragonX is number, I think, like 19, and then TitanX number like 21 or something like that. What if we see the same thing on Pulsechain, where you have build on TitanX protocols being in the top ranks on 2 chains at the same time? How even crazier would that be? Not even including the rubber banding that eventually Pulsechain will go through its rapid acceleration rate. Just like we all knew that TitanX would take time to meet inflation versus deflation, right? To cross into that marriage and then go into hyper deflation based on how many protocols are being built. Eventually, Pulsechain will run. And when it runs, especially running in concurrent to Ethereum, man, that's going to be interesting to see the arbitrage stuff. And especially when you take in how can you make money with something that has a dynamic protocol fee, but also tries to stay within the ratio of 8-to-1, and you plug your liquidity in right there within that tight range on both different chains, and you can earn a ton of fees, especially if you're thinking about where things in the Titanx community are on the leaderboard of how many transactions and the eyeballs going in on that. And so all of those fees not only is not detracting or taking away from the base protocol, that gives you ammunition to rebuy more Titanx, to create more Pulsar if you want to re-accelerate the piston right there. And all of that is just using protocols that are set already in a ground foundation across the board. So yeah, there is zero extraction going on through that process.
Okay, that's awesome. I appreciate that. Let's transition. Let's give you guys a second to kind of take a little break, and then I will pop up the panel stream, and we'll get to the discussions, and we'll do our debates, and maybe we'll let you take a little nap in a bit, Larry.
Oh no, I'm good to go. I'm up.
He's
and
good
ready.
now. Now that he's up, he's good. You can't stop
He's
him
like,
now.
no.
Well, that's the problem with
He's
me is
ready
that
now.
once the machine is running, I go forever. It's when I'm trying to rest that you must stay in the bed. You know, a good quote by Eric Thomas is, when you want to succeed as much as you want to breathe, then you'll be successful. And so like that's basically like how I live, is in that grinder phase that's always going on. Do we want to just pop up the secondary stream and yeah, discussion panel 5 minutes?
Yeah. So guys, if you go to the X page, I got the link already up there. We're going to start the page in 5 minutes. I think Jake's going to hop in, so you can go hop on his link as well. So give us just a couple minutes, guys. We're going to let everyone get some water and do a little tinkle break. And
that's right.
Then, yeah, I said that. And then we'll start our discussion.
That's
all
right,
guys. I love you.
You guys
Appreciate
over
you.
there.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mo. See ya.
See you guys in just a couple minutes.